Today we're going to be taking a look at the R9 390X against an RX 470. Probably two cards you wouldn't necessarily compare against each other, but they're both from MSI and they both look about the same. Yeah, you probably would take a RX 480 and compare it against the 390X before these two, but we're going to look at these two because I think they're more comparable than you might think. So to kick things off, we need to know what both of these cards pack when it comes to performance. And obviously, if you look at the stats right now, they kind of do look fairly comparable, at least these two specifically. And they're both from MSI, and they both have the same amount of GDDR5 RAM, and in theory, they look pretty much the same too. But they're going to perform maybe different, probably, because they're both different, technically. I mean, they're different chipsets and architecture, and one's a lot newer than one, although the older card still costs $200+. And yes, in theory, it does have slightly better stats and should outperform it. But is it going to outperform it? I mean, this comes down to so many factors. Are the drivers finally worked out for the 390X and making it the best possible, version of itself that it can be? Or is the 470 actually a better card than people give it credit for? I don't think people think the 470 is a bad card. Just depending on what price you find one at, you can either pick up a 480, which, is a great card. People won't deny that for what it costs. Or even for a little bit more, if you find one on sale, a 1060. So today we're going to look at these two and see how they kind of line up, see which one's better in which scenarios, and just kind of find out for fun which one's worth, the money. Obviously, probably not the card that costs so damn much and eats way more power, but nonetheless, we'll take a look at them. What we also want to know is the test bench, or at least what we ran them in, and obviously all the stats of that are on the screen right now. We used my rig, and overall, I think, you're not going to run into too many bottlenecks in my machine, probably, but, at least now you know what it was run on. The first game that we ran was Overwatch with the settings on Epic. Everything we did test was at 1080p because that's what most people still play on. The average FPS for the 390X was higher, but I wouldn't say that the 470 necessarily did a bad job here. All of those are still really respectable for playing a game on Epic, at least hit all the FPS marks that you want to be at. But yes, the 390X does win this test here. Just, it outperformed it. There's really nothing to say there. Pretty significantly outperformed it, but, once again, the 470 didn't do a bad job. Next, though, we decided to take a look at Grand Theft Auto 5 on the default high settings that the game wants to run at, and then we matched them across the board. So overall, actually, this one's kind of a coin flip. Yes, technically, the 390X does have a higher average FPS by 1. But that's not a big difference, or really a comparable difference. But surprisingly, the 470 did hit a higher average maximum FPS at 221, or at least hit a higher point at points. Really, really surprising. I know some people will probably not believe these numbers. They were done in the benchmarking mode. But overall, the RX kind of fought back in this a little bit. And both of them hit a low of 35. I'm assuming it's probably something in the game that no card really likes to run. It's probably a specific instance that just chugs a little bit. But overall, kind of an interesting outcome between these two and something to maybe look at. Next, there was Dirt Rally. We ran it on Ultra with 2x MSAA. And the 470 actually won this test. Now, not by like a crazy margin, but it did win, and that's something to take away. I mean, four higher on the average and a little bit higher too in the maximum, and it just overall won. Because both of the cards decided to run this game so well on Ultra, we decided to turn the MSAA up to ×8. And this actually became a little bit of a surprise. The 390X decided to run it very well, and the 470 decided it didn't really want to run it with this much anti-aliasing. So this kind of goes back and forth again too. If you want to run the game at a fine rate of Ultra with 2x MSAA, yeah, the 470 is going to work great. But if you're going to run it with more anti-aliasing, this kind of gets worrying because the 390X kind of did completely fine and the 470 kind of fell on its face. And finally, we took a look at Rise of the Tomb Raider, everything maxed out. And the 390X did win, but only by 8 frames. Yes, a victory, and not a super huge one, but a victory in and among itself, and really nothing to debate there. It did run the game better, and at least that 60 FPS we at least look at to get, with the 470 just being 500, but not quite at 60. So there you have it, the 390X against an RX 470. The test you didn't necessarily think you would need to know or see, but kind of interesting overall. I'm not sure if that anti-aliasing is something to worry about with the 470. Maybe the 390 just has a little bit more computing power, that the 470 lacks, and that's just why it was that different. But overall, I thought the other tests were all pretty-ish close, or at least still pretty, at least acceptable for where the 470 kind of ended up. I mean, for a card that uses more than 50 less watts of power, and at least if you compare the prices new, is $200 about cheaper, I'd say the 470 did a pretty good job. But what did you guys think about the test? Let me know down below in the comments about which one you thought would win, which one you think really does win. I mean, yeah, if you're looking at numbers, the 390X wins. But if you think about the price you'd pay for these cards or what you would want to get, maybe you wouldn't get either of these cards for the price. Maybe you would get a 480, maybe you get a 1060. So let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see all of you in the next video.